At least 110 billion euros a year and growing. That's how much organised crime costs Europe every year. With evidence of increasing infiltration into the legal economy, what is being done to tackle the criminal gangs and their proceeds? Welcome to On the Front Line. Organised crime groups in Europe are making massive amounts of money, equivalent to around 1% of the EU's GDP every year, according to new research. Illicit drugs are the most lucrative criminal market. Heroin tops that list, closely followed by cocaine and cannabis. Human trafficking, VAT fraud, weapons and tobacco smuggling provide other major revenue streams. To clean dirty money, criminal gangs turn to the legal economy. Cash-intensive sectors are preferred. Less traceable cash is funneled through the tills of bars, restaurants and nightclubs, which also provide convenient covers for prostitution rings and drugs markets. Money transfer businesses, property and the construction and transport sectors are other good ways to launder. More recently, the renewable energy and waste management sector have been targeted. Research suggests the authorities in Europe are seizing more criminal assets, but a significant gap still exists between what criminals make and what is confiscated. For example, legal companies set up by criminals rarely get seized. Europe's open borders have also enabled criminals to move cash and invest in other parts of the EU easily. Discrepancies in European law and the increasingly fragmented nature of criminal groups only highlight the difficulties faced by police in the battle against organised crime. To discuss this issue further is Brian Donald from Europol and Professor Ernesto Savona, Director of Transcrime. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on the front line. Brian Donald, if I could start with you. These figures, 110 billion euros, it's the same size as the first Greek bailout. What is being done to tackle this?
No, I think it's right to be concerned about the size of the figure. I mean, the numbers involved are quite mind-blowing in some respects. When we hear the numbers in relation to MTIC fraud, for example, it's a substantial part of the legitimate economy, the legitimate tax gain that a member state is losing. There is a lot being done. Member states are working together through Europol to act collectively to address the issue of the assets that are generated by organised crime.
It clearly doesn't seem to be enough, though, what's being done, because 110 billion euros, that could save Greece. I mean, do you need more resources?
No, I think it's not so much the resources. I think we have to use the legislation and the legal frameworks that we have smarter. I think we have to cooperate even more than we're doing already. I think we have to get our intelligence flows correct. I think we need to understand the problem. We need to follow the money. To follow the money, we need the intelligence to know where it is, who's handling it, where it's ending up. All of these things remain intelligence gaps for us at the European level. OK,
I'll come back to you on that in a moment. Professor Savona, Italy is traditionally seen as the gateway to Europe in terms of organised crime. Is that still the case, or is it a bit more complex than that?
This belongs to a traditional paradigm that Italy was the gate. Today, in Europe, you have many different gates. Europe is in the middle of a global market, also a global criminal market. So you have a Russian gate, Chinese gate. There are so many that the idea that Italians are the main gate, it's really not so anymore.
OK, you mentioned the Chinese, the Russians. Yeah. Who are these organised criminals, and where are they funneling their money?
Well, the money they find, it's in Europe because they produce this illegal money, trafficking in drugs, or human trafficking, and they export this money back. It could be or China or United States or Europe, as I said before, it's really on the center of something, but it's not the only place where the people do money.
Stemming the finance of these groups, stripping them of their assets is surely key. Why is Europe so bad at it?
No, I don't think Europe is bad at it. I think we are making tremendous strides forward.
If I could just give you a figure, in the UK, for example, 0.25% of criminal proceeds are confiscated by the police. Most of that is used then to fund the confiscations orders. So the policing of this seems completely ineffective.
No, it's not completely ineffective. As I say, we still have to satisfy particularly high levels of proof in relation to the seizure of assets. However easy governments have tried to make it, we still have to satisfy courts that we can prove that these are criminal assets. And very often that's difficult.
OK. Could Europe be doing better in terms of confiscating assets?
European could do much better than it's going to do today. There is an asymmetry in legislation between member states, first, a difficulty in implementing this legislation at a local level, and the third problem is also the capability of law enforcement to change perspective, which means going after the proceeds of crime and not only going after the people.
The EU Commission has just published a new strategy on this in terms of trying to get better action on confiscation. Will it help, do you think?
This will help a lot if the member states will be capable to implement this strategy, because you can write with one hand the strategy, but with the other hand you need to implement it. But the other hand is on the hands of the member states.
That's the problem, isn't it? We have 28 legal systems, 24 languages. Does Europe need to be better in terms of cooperation here?
Yes. I mean, you know, I work for the preeminent law enforcement agency, and we are utterly reliant upon cooperation. So anything that we are failing to achieve is largely because we collectively are not cooperating enough. But that doesn't mean to say that we're not cooperating a lot. We are. And every day we're exchanging information between member states on criminal assets, on proceeds of crime, in an attempt to follow the money, in an attempt to run parallel investigations. So we're doing a lot.
Could some countries be doing better in terms of cooperation?
Well, we have 28 with different legal systems, different cultures, different structure of police. Putting it together, integrating, it's very difficult. But it could be done much better to make much more efficient and effective. This is quite sure.
The banks, how much are they clamping down on this money laundering, or are they just paying lip service to it?
Well, the banking system in Europe has been working probably better than the law enforcement system in terms of cooperation. A big jump was done when they put the offshore countries in a blacklist. So today the banking system is doing quite well. The big problem we do have still in Europe is the asymmetries in the tax system. This is producing a lot of differences that could be exploited. We need to remember that tax fraud is one of the predicate offenses for money laundering. But for understanding the tax system and for implementing it, you need really to have or to reduce the amount of asymmetries between the different fiscal regimes, including Europe. But this looks to be quite difficult, probably more difficult than having criminal laws harmonized across the countries.
The banks, fiscal harmonization, all that sort of stuff, does that cause you headaches, does sleepless nights?
Well, I don't think we're too troubled by fiscal harmonisation. I'll pick up on one point that Ernesto made in terms of the legislation in relation to criminal assets in the banking sector. They have obligations, so they are obliged to have people who look at these things, identify the suspicious transactions, and they're obliged to report them to the competent authorities. Obligation is a word that is lacking in EU law enforcement cooperation. Member states don't like it. They don't like to be obliged to do anything with anybody, least of all Europol. I'm not saying that Europol would argue for that, but it is a fundamental difference between legislation impacted upon financial institutions and legislation that impacts upon law enforcement authorities.
The backdrop to this is obviously austerity. Police budgets are being slashed across Europe. Do you see this problem of organised crime being resolved with this current economic climate?
Well, I mean, you only have to look at the recent outcomes of Justice and Home Affairs Council meetings and the recent European Council to see the additional tasks that have been placed upon Europol. Sadly, to date, they haven't come with additional resources, either financial or personnel. But
so that's pie in the sky then, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not pie in the sky. I mean, we have to do it, and we will do it. That's just the reality of the world that we live in just now. All chief officers would welcome more resources. They would welcome increased pay for their staff. They would welcome the ability to retain long-serving members of staff. We all face the same problem.
But given that, do you see the situation improving, given the economic situation that we're in,
Yeah.
limited resources, what do you see happening?
Okay, so I've been doing this for 35 years. We've been through this before. You know, public sector occasionally takes a hit, as is right, you know, in terms of the financial situation that member states are facing. That's just a reality. But I think that we can go a long way if we use what we have smarter and more effectively.
Professor, do you see things improving given the current economic situation Europe finds itself in?
Limited resources are an incentive for law enforcement to think about their role and to reorganize the role. And probably in the future you can do much better with less money.
They might not be happy to hear that.
Of course. I'm really happy when I said to my minister in Italy that he could have much more security with less money. But all law enforcement in Europe welcome more resources. It's typical. Once Transcrime gave this data about 110 billion euro per year, people said, so little? It's better to increase. The problem is to rethink the role of law enforcement. My feeling, you need much more intelligence, capabilities and understanding the problems, less people on the streets, if you want, for different reasons, at least in Europe. Let us see what will be the reaction of the different countries. But I still believe that according to the data, you can have less people on the streets, more people in the intelligence systems, and a better organization.
I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. That's it for this edition of On the Front Line. You can find us on social media in Euronews.com. Until the next time, thanks for watching.